young conservatives, conservatives who are, kind of up and coming, are the leaders of the future and that sort of thing. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first got involved in this in like 2009, there just aren't very many young conservatives, because a lot of times when you're younger, you are liberal. I mean, when I was in college, I was liberal. That's just the way I was. Not a classical liberal, but, the kinds of liberal. I'm basically trying to pay a penance, I guess, for all my ridiculous thoughts in the past. But anyway, welcome back. Welcome to the program for the first time. We have Mr. Kyle Boyd with us. He's our guest today for our Young Conservative or Conservative Future segment. Kyle, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be with you this morning.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. So talk to us, Kyle. Let's just start from the top. You're 29 years old, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you're 29. How did you develop a conservative worldview, and how did you arrive at this point?
Well, honestly, I've been conservative probably my whole life. I think, like you said just a moment ago, when I was in college, there were probably some times where I had a little more liberal-leaning ideologies at times, but I grew up in a conservative home, and grew up in you grow up in the South. Most of us tend to grow up, I think, in the South, or traditionally have grown up in the South in more of a conservative environment. Grew up with a family that's, very Christian faith oriented. And so for me, it wasn't really a battle to become a conservative. It's always just kind of been what my family has believed and stood for, whether that be conservative socially and morally, or even politically and fiscally conservative. So it's just kind of always been ingrained in my DNA from the very beginning.
Well, that's good, and we hear that from a lot of folks, how it was their upbringing that led them to this point. And I always, when I hear that, sometimes I forget to say this, but I think if we have any young parents out there listening, that is something to certainly take to heart, and to not just hear, but to implement and realize how valuable a strong family and parenting and being intentional with your kids is, not necessarily so that they come up and agree with all of your views politically, but just, what kind of influence you do have as parents over your kids. And it's very, very important. Now, Kyle, what is it that you do right now for a living? I talked to you earlier. You're actually involved in you have two things that you do, right?
Yeah, I'm bivocational. In my secular career, I work as a CFO of ABC Block and Brick in Little Rock. We manufacture concrete masonry units, and then in the other part of my world, I am on the pastoral staff at Turnpoint Church in Conway.
Wow, that's awesome. And so, how did you fall into the pastoral staff there? Was that what you were doing initially, or were you in the secular world initially?
Well, I've grown up in ministry. My family's been in the ministry, and I always knew I had a call of God on my life to pursue and to follow. Doesn't mean I always followed it as well as I should. There are times, when you're younger, when you're in college, you don't want to follow God always. Mm-hmm. But I got my secular degree and went to work. I started my career at a public accounting firm in Northwest Arkansas, and then became a youth pastor there at a church in Rogers, and then moved back down. I went to school at UCA, and so we moved back down. My wife and I did move back down here a couple of years ago. Started working in the church here, worked in some various positions, and now we oversee the youth and the college and young adult groups, as well as some other administrative things at the church. But it's been, like I said, I grew up in a ministry family, and just like my conservative values were always there from the very beginning, ministry roots and trying to follow after the will of God has always been, always been there in our minds of trying to follow what He wants us to do. So it's just, I don't know that I can say it was a moment in time where it was like, you got to do this, but God has just continued to open doors for us. We've tried to follow the best we could.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. This is Conduit News Radio. I am your host, Paul Harrell. Thank you so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of that. One of the ways, as always, you can do that. Call us, text us, 870-275-9799. Sound off online on our Facebook live feed, facebook.com/Conduit News. We've got a great show for you. Coming up here at the bottom of the hour, we'll have Mr. Josh Waters. We'll be checking in to give us an update about what happened at the Tax Reform and Relief Task Force that took place yesterday. They had a meeting where they once again addressed the internet sales tax. They also addressed a few other things. That you wouldn't think they would address, but it seems like maybe some of them are listening to this program, so they're trying to combat the message of truth they hear on this program with carefully crafted language that they learn from family members. Anyway, this is just what I hear. I've got audio coming on this, and so we will definitely probably get that to you tomorrow once we analyze what exactly was said yesterday in the task force meeting. But, again, Mr. Josh Waters will be on the program at the bottom of this hour, and very excited to talk to him as always. Then, at the top of the next hour, so at 7:05, we'll be talking with Mr. Dan Wass. Mr. Dan Wass is the author of a book called Good Gun, Bad Guy, Behind the Lies of the Anti-Gun Radical. As we see that there, I got a signed copy of the book that he sent me. And so it's a very good read. It's a very easy read. I find his perspective very refreshing. Just trying to dive into the mind of an anti-gun radical. Like, what are they really afraid of? And there's a whole chapter on that, really, and how, an anti-gun radical doesn't understand guns and is actually terrified of guns, the very sight of a gun. So we'll be talking to Mr. Dan Wass at 7. And then at 7:33 today, I know we got a loaded show for you. At 7:33, Melissa Kohler is going to be back on to talk more about these coming trucking regulations, Department of Transportation that may affect. We did an interview 2 weeks ago talking about how this is going to now affect people who are hauling livestock. The Department of Transportation has come out and said, no, it's not going to happen. Well, we're going to have her on again to address what the DOT is saying. I have my own speculation as to what's really going on behind the scenes, but I'm going to reserve that for the segment and see what Melissa thinks. And then we'll also, in the 7 o'clock hour, we will be checking in on the Senate Special Election District 16. Mr. Bob Bailey's just going to be calling in for a short segment. He's one of the candidates up there. Early voting starts today in that Senate district. So you're going to want to, if you're in the Russellville area and beyond, in that large Senate District 16, it's a special election. There are 3 Republicans running, and we know that Republicans, that's essentially your primaries are the general election now in Arkansas because of the popularity of the Republican Party platform. Now, on the Republican Party platform, excellent segue here, there was a much discussion last night at the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party about the Republican Party platform because Miss Jan Morgan Republican candidate for governor, was in town. She was in Jonesboro. And let me just say, I mean, Jonesboro is where I live. So if you don't know that, I've lived here my whole life. And so I do the program from a studio here in town. And so I attended this event. It was with my new schedule, staying out till 7 o'clock was a little bit past my bedtime. But just so you know, I have been attending political events. I've been attending political events for a long time now, very much like this one, for several years, several election cycles. And I will tell you that I have never seen a turnout like this one ever when it comes to a Tea Party meeting or a committee meeting or something. I've never seen a turnout, and this picture doesn't do it justice that we have up. This is Gary Epperson posted this. This was early on in the gathering because people got there early so that they could eat. It was at the Western Sizzlin'. The room filled out past more than that. I took a few photos. I tried to take a panoramic photo, and it didn't work out. This photo does not do it justice. It was standing room only. They ran out of seats. You had an enthusiastic crowd. You had an engaged crowd. They were listening to everything that Jan Morgan was saying. And, of course, Jan was in her normal form of, being extremely specific and articulate and just such a good communicator about what her message is of limited government and how we don't have that right now in Asa Hutchinson. And I just want to tell you, I was extremely impressed by the crowd. A lot of people were extremely impressed by the crowd. There were people I saw that I'd never seen before that had come out to hear Jan Morgan speak. And so it was a very impressive event. And so I'd like, first of all, give credit to the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party for having Jan Morgan, and then just everybody else that organized it. I mean, it was a fabulous event, and you could just tell people are there. They want to hear. They want to hear conservatism. They want something different. I think people are aware that there is, something rotten in Denmark. I think people are aware that they could have a more conservative governor, and that Jan is that alternative. And, she kept talking throughout the night about, hey, you guys are going to be making the choice that you have. And she kept talking about how, I'm just doing this because thousands of Arkansans ask me to because of what, the policies that we have now are not the policies that a lot of people, think we should have. And so that's why she's there. And it was just really, really refreshing to hear her speak and, recount her interactions with the governor, recount his record to the folks. And some people had no idea. Some people had no idea, for example, that Governor Asa Hutchinson has, never signed the anti-Sharia law bill. Some people didn't know that. It's great. I've actually heard Jan make this point before because she gives an immense amount of credit to the Arkansas General Assembly for passing the bill out of the Senate committee, out of the Senate, out of the House committee, out of the House, getting it to the governor's desk. Now, it did become law because he just didn't sign it and allowed it to become law without his signature or veto, but he didn't sign the thing because he didn't think it was necessary. That was his position because he doesn't want to be proactive in that. And, to hear that, it's people are very shocked by that. And the main reason he didn't sign it, and the main reason he opposed it the entire way, and yet you had State Representative Brant Smith that actually just kept doing and kept pursuing it, even though the governor's office was telling him to stop. This idea that we want to wait for a disaster to happen, or we want to wait for something bad to happen. Something unconstitutional, and then we react. And it's like, no, I mean, we can see this is just basically a very straightforward bill, but he didn't want the criticism. Asa did not want the criticism that he faces from the left. Governor Hutchinson is more worried about criticism from leftists. Moms demand action. The LGBT community, the Islam community when they were upset, folks. They were upset because this thing makes Sharia law unenforceable. And so any criticism from people who are on the left, Asa is way more concerned about than he is criticism from the right. Now, his concern from criticism on the right has increased a little bit because this is an election year. I mean, why do you think he went on Fox News yesterday? Governor Asa Hutchinson went on Fox News yesterday, was interviewed by Brian Kilmeade. And, this is where, this is where I get really frustrated with the network. I mean, these polls... Governor, there's a new poll out, and Governor Asa Hutchinson, the 8th most popular governor. Where's Scott Walker on that list? Is he really popular? No. I would rather you compare Arkansas and Wisconsin. Wisconsin, a blue state. Scott Walker goes in there, and he actually makes real change, real reform, and guess what? He's not number 8 on the list. You see, if Asa were actually doing the reform that the people were voting for, there would be the media would be attacking him, and his popularity would take a hit because there's a lot of people that just read whatever is the media gives them, and they believe it. We have the audio of this. I want to play this because he did talk about working. He got a question, was a very surprising question about working across the aisle. How do you? Let's actually listen to some of this. Here it is. This is Asa Hutchinson on Fox News yesterday. Take a listen.
Popular governors in the country. One thing they have in common, they're all Republicans, believe it or not. So what's their secret to success? Joining us right now is the 8th most popular governor on this list with 59% approval, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, thanks so much. Congratulations. Does this mean anything to you?
Asa Hutchinson. Asa Hutchinson. What is it? Wasn't there that morning show with Kathy Lee Gifford and that other girl that where they always drink wine or something? I don't know if that's what's going on. And look, I like Fox and Friends, and I like Fox. It's just these. I think Asa knows there's a lot of people in Arkansas who watch Fox and Friends. In the morning. I think this was specifically just a campaign, promotion on this poll. But if you compare just listen to the thing. Let me shut up for a second.
Was the 8th most popular governor on this list with 59% approval, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, thanks so much. Congratulations. Does this mean anything to you?
Well, it does. It just reaffirms that the people like what we're doing. Governors and Republican governors are solving problems, addressing needs. In Arkansas's case, we've lowered taxes, the biggest income tax cut in Arkansas history.
Let's take this one at a time, shall we? Biggest income tax in tax cut in Arkansas history. You have increased spending $600 million since you've been here, Governor. So if you've lowered it by $100 million, and it's really, by the way, let's be factual here. That $50 million, so it's a $100 million tax cut, and he says 150, but the 50 hasn't taken into effect yet. Hasn't gone into effect yet because we have no money because of Medicaid expansion, Obamacare. Okay, so let's just be factual. It's only $100 million for starters because the other stuff hasn't kicked in yet. And they could still, who knows? They could call a special session. They could Johnny sweep the legs. Coming tax cut. And by the way, it was $50 million on people who don't pay any taxes. It was on the lowest income tax bracket. Anyway, just to be clear, let's take it one step at a time. Your talking points, largest tax cut. Well, the Democrats have been in control of our tax policy for 138 years, so that's not saying anything. By the way, I want to remind you, he goes 59% approval rating. This guy lost 17 points. In a Talk Business Hendricks College poll, Asa Hutchinson lost 17 points from April to October last year among Republicans. Now, those 17 points among Republicans, that sent alarm bells everywhere. and everybody was starting to panic because they understand that the people that are disapproving are primary voters. Keep going.
Created 60,000 jobs since I've been governor. We have reduced regulation, and we've moved people from Medicaid into work. Those are things that the people like, and I think when a Republican governor...
I understand he is now claiming a very, very, very high number in terms of how many he's claiming he's moved from Medicaid into work, when the actual number was like, what was it, 6,000 out of like 330,000 from his supposed work requirements that we now know are they admit are not work requirements. They were work referral requirements, meaning that we were just required to give them a sheet of paper with an address on it saying, hey, if you want to work, this is where you can go if you want to. But there's no enforcement mechanism, no nothing. Yeah, they're saying, according to their numbers, if you can even believe them, I think it was only like 6,000, maybe 4,000 or something like that. It's just an abysmal failure percentage-wise. We have to take a break. I'll get to more of this when we come back. But anyway, yeah, so back real quick to recap. I'm telling you, I've been coming to events in Northeast Arkansas for a long time now. I have never seen the enthusiasm. I've never seen the crowd turn out the way they turned out yesterday for Jan Morgan. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist healthcare program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so that photo of Jan Morgan in that event last night, I'm telling you, it's an undersell. That first of all, the room is about 25% bigger from the angle where that camera, the camera was. Oh, by the way, media. There was so much media there last night. I mean, we had affiliates from ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. You had the Blytheville Courier News from Mississippi County that made the journey, I'm told. I believe KASU was there as well. I was told they were there. I didn't actually see them. Anyway, it's a lot of media there that were there, covering the event. It was just unbelievable to see a turnout like that. Okay. Yesterday morning, Asa was on Fox. He went on. By the way, somebody saying on Facebook that he, when he says that reduced regulation, what a crock. Yeah. He went on Fox and Friends, and he talked about how he's reduced regulation. Yeah. Tell that to the hog farm up in the Buffalo River area, which we're going to cover that tomorrow, by the way. And we're going to go over the history of what the state of Arkansas has done and now what Asa Hutchinson's Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality is doing and who they're apparently listening to essentially put more regulations on this hog farm that has just already been through the ringer and complied with what the government told them to do. And then they complied, and now the government is changing the rules on them. Here's Asa, though, yesterday talking about less regulation.
Governors have that philosophy. They do that. They solve problems. The people like it.
Governor, you also brought up one of the things that you feel like you put your fingerprints on was doing something in high school when it comes to computers. What is it?
Well, that was probably the most exciting thing that we've done in terms of education. I ran on putting computer coding in every high school. Mandated that every high school has to offer it. Since then, we've actually put it in the middle schools and some integration into the lower grades. Yeah. We've had a 400% increase in those that are taking computer science, and we've been recognized as leading the nation in computer science education. But that's the skill that our students need for the future as jobs, but it's bringing technology companies to Arkansas and supporting our existing industries like Walmart and some of the great global leaders in our state.
Here are some of the other high-ranking governors.
Got to get a plug for Walmart in there. I will say this: we're going to well, here let's finish up because we're going to run up against the hard break.
See if your governor's on this list. Number one is Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, Republican. Larry Hogan, Maryland, known to be blue. He's red. Kay Ivey over in Alabama. Phil Scott in Vermont, home of Bernie Sanders. Matt Mead, Brian Sandoval in Nevada. People speak highly of him as well. And Gary Herbert over in Utah. Now, Governor, you got a few decisions to make. One of which is the President of the United States.
What a list of Republicans. Oh, my gosh. What a list of I'm telling you. Wow. I mean, is this poll designed to promote liberal Republicans? Is that what this poll is designed to do? I don't know. Just a question. All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to get a task force update from Mr. Josh Waters. Good morning to you. This is Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell, back in just a moment. We're talking with Kyle Boyd. This is our Young Conservative segment where we kind of highlight future conservatives. So, Kyle, tell me about conservatism politically. When you hear that word in a political context, what does it mean to you? Because sometimes it can mean different things to different people.
Sure, absolutely. I think one of the best ways that I think of it is it's simplicity. I think the government should be limited to its most simple functions, to its most necessary function, and then we should as Americans have the right to live our life and do the things that we want to do without the government interfering. So I think conservative is about making everything simple, about getting all the complexities of government and all that kind of stuff out of the way, and just living by common sense deals. Now we need government. Obviously, there are some things that we need government for. We need them to help provide the common defense and to do certain things. But honestly, when it comes to business, I work in a small business. Our company we have 9 manufacturing facilities. 8 of those are in Arkansas. 1 of those is in Louisiana. We're the largest concrete masonry unit manufacturer in the state of Arkansas. I want government to get out of the way so our business can grow, and so the simple things that government can do without getting in the way and convoluting the system, that's what I want. When I think of being conservative and having a conservative political view, it is trying to let the individual govern themselves to as much extent as possible and getting the government out of the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you are exactly right, and I'm really glad that you brought up the small business aspect of it. As being a CFO, I think you obviously see the money coming in, the money going out, the money going to the government, and so when the government comes back, I mean, specifically here in Arkansas, we have seen Republican-led legislature raise our taxes and attempt to raise them even more, and you stop and think, well, we're already giving you money to do these things. And if you would just fulfill the stuff that we all agree on, like building roads, instead, we come up with new programs and new ways of dependency, and it just gets frustrating. And I think they're mismanaging our money. Let me ask you this, Kyle. How do you feel about what it's the overwhelming philosophy today among our leaders here in Arkansas and other states as well? And it's what they call economic development. And in many cases, their definition of economic development
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
A few of our Facebook comments. Dan on Facebook Live saying the government is choking small business. You're exactly right, Dan. Shane on Facebook reminding everyone that early voting for the Senate 16 special election starts today. Yeah, we mentioned that, and we'll be checking in with Bob Bailey probably around, I'm going to say 7:50, 7:52 in the next hour. He'll be giving us a early voting update on that. And let's see here. Gary on Facebook, the lamestream Arkansas media is sure trying to bury the folks from C&H Hog Farm, twisting facts to suit them. That is exactly right. Okay, so welcome back to the program. We've got Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies is on with us. Josh, welcome back to the show.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
Good morning to you. So what I want to know is, yesterday we had that task force meeting on taxes, and you're always in attendance, and you do such a good job of recapping what happened. But this one was interesting because I understand they were going over the prospects of another internet sales tax debate. This is something that was already defeated, which means they shouldn't even be discussing it because the conservatives have already, they put up a good enough defense to say we're not going to pass this tax on people. What was the environment like? Was it pretty pro-tax increase on the people of Arkansas?
Yes, it was, Paul. Yesterday the agenda was basically split evenly between kind of miscellaneous revenue, and then the rest of the time was really focused on, the internet sales tax. A lot of discussion on the constitutionality of it, going back to the Quill versus North Dakota decision. And then there was some discussion towards the end about maybe how much money they could collect. But at the end of the day, Paul, to me it was pretty obvious that, the way some of the questioning went from some of the legislators and just kind of the response from some of the government officials there, that it was really geared more towards, okay, if and when we can get an internet sales tax, how much money is that going to be? And they didn't really know the answer to that question. But I would say it was did seem to be very much pro internet sales tax from some of the legislators and then some of the government officials who were presenting about it.
So I'm excited to get to listen to the audio, and I know we're going to have that. Hopefully we'll have that coming, and we'll listen to it tomorrow on the program. But, I kind of get the feeling. Okay, so let me just ask you this. Were there any questions that just they don't want to be – let me just say this. It's obvious to me they don't want to be seen as increasing taxes on the people of Arkansas. But the arguments, that's what the internet sales tax is. It's going to be taking more money out of us, out of our pockets that we could be spending elsewhere. And so, it is a tax increase. We firmly established that they're just after more money, and more money from us to the government is a tax increase any way you look at it. But it seems like they want to focus on the verbiage and the language, and they want to find any way to be able to say, no, it's not a tax increase. Were they trying to, get these bureaucrats to agree with them?
Yes, they were, Paul. At the very beginning of this portion of the meeting yesterday, before they even started on the internet sales tax, Representative Charlie Collins, who's a advocate of the internet sales tax, he asked them before they could even get started on any information. He said, I just want to get this on the record in this public meeting. This isn't really a tax increase, is it? It's not a new tax. We're just trying to collect a tax that's already on the books. And he's like, now, isn't that correct? Am I wrong there? And so the government official said that he was correct. And Paul, we know that that's just not 100% accurate. Like you said, this is placing a new sales tax on the point of sale on online purchasers who do not have a physical presence in the state. Mm-hmm. The law on the books right now is a use tax, and it is owed and it is due.
They just don't have a mechanism to enforce collection on. So what you said is the law right now is a use tax. And a lot of people don't know, so if you buy stuff on the internet, you're supposed to, remit taxes as a use tax. But it's very difficult to enforce because they don't know what you've bought. Right. Go ahead.
And that's, and that's what we're doing here. That's why they have to try to change the law, Paul, is because they're not getting as much money as they want under the use tax. And I'm not advocating saying, okay, no one, pay their use tax. That's due. The state has the legal authority to enforce that. What they do not have the legal authority to do is try to force an out-of-state company without a physical presence in the state to collect and remit back to the state a sales tax at the point of sale for these online purchases. Mm-hmm. The state has no legal authority under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, and as applied in the Quill versus North Dakota decision and long-standing Supreme Court precedent. And until, in specific language in some of those cases, Paul, was that this is in the purview of Congress, which is consistent with the Commerce Clause, and only until Congress acts can anything change with this, unless the Supreme Court changes its mind. But even then, I would hope that the Supreme Court does not legislate from the bench, but instead upholds precedent, and this is what Congress should decide. And since they've declined to decide it, Paul, my argument would be they've said what they want to say, and the people have been represented say we're not going to have an internet sales tax. And until Congress changes its mind, Arkansas has no legal authority, and in my opinion, no business trying to pass an internet sales tax here in Arkansas.
It seems like the mentality is, ever have like a damp washcloth, And it seems like what they're trying to do is ring it, and we're the washcloth taxpayers, and they're just trying to get as much money out of us as they can. Was there anybody that offered pushback? Was there anybody that was like, hey, this is going to be more, you guys are after more of money out of our pockets to the government?
Yes, there was some pushback from at least one legislator. Senator Trent Garner, actually later on in the presentation, he kind of, I think, poked fun because people bend over backwards sometimes in how they phrase this, and they carefully craft their language around what the internet sales tax is, and it can get really complicated, and there is a key legal distinction between the use tax and legal tax. But his question, which is what people really care about, Paul, at the end of the day, does this bill mean that there will be more money coming out of the pocketbook of Arkansans and into the government coffers? And that's the question he asked to the same person who agreed wholeheartedly with Representative Collins. And this person's response, Paul, was, well, I don't know the numbers. Instead of admitting that this bill plainly, which the sponsors admitted during the session, that their estimate would be $100 to $150 million in new revenue. He asked a similar question to a DFNA official, and they're like, well, all these people are tax delinquent, so it would mean we'd have less tax delinquents.
Oh,
and
wow. Gosh.
That's right. You know, and that was really frustrating. The disdain that these people have for the people of Arkansas and the taxpayer of Arkansas, because they're not getting more money from them, basically, is my opinion of it. So, you know, I'm thankful for Senator Trent Garner for kind of standing up there and thinking about, okay, how does this not affect the government and how much money these governments can get, but how does this affect the taxpayer, the customer of government?
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear that Senator Trent Garner, you know, didn't stay silent and tried to point out. I mean, it seems to me these bureaucrats, I don't know. I mean, either the bureaucrats are being worked like a puppet, or the politicians are being worked. It seems like seems like the bureaucrats and the pro, you know, tax increase people are all on the same page for the most part.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think we talked about this back right after the session, Paul, is a lot of times in these committee meetings, it's about how this affects government, and there's tons of lobbyists there who are somehow, their clients are somehow benefiting from government. And there's not many people down there, unfortunately, and that's where Conduit comes into play. Conduit doesn't get anything from there being an internet sales tax or not an internet sales tax. Conduit's advocating for smaller government, economic freedom, and shrinking the size of government. And frankly, the internet sales tax would grow the size of government in Arkansas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And at some point, I mean, we see the increased spending year after year, especially over the last 4 years. And the only way, and Conduit for Commerce, you know, they've had, you know, this great policy paper where, you know, they talk about, listen, if you just if you cut taxes, the law requires you to balance the budget. So if we can just limit the amount of money or cut off the flow of the money to the government itself has to balance, because that's what the law says, that we can't run a deficit, we can't have a debt. And so that's actually really encouraging. And so why would we want, I mean, if you're a small government person, why would you want to give the government another $150 million a year that they'll just find some way to spend? And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, one other thing that was said yesterday that kind of caught me off guard was one of the CLR representatives, they're going through the case that's going to go up to the Supreme Court, because we will hear something on an internet sales tax type bill that came out of South Dakota that Senate Bill 140 was based on.
Yeah.
And in these arguments, she kind of went through, okay, here are the arguments that the state of South Dakota has. One of the arguments that just really caught me off guard was that not having an internet sales tax creates, quote, economic waste. Economic waste because people are buying online instead of in their local stores. And, Paul, as we know, the free market, there's no economic waste in the free market by people going online and making their purchases. It's only economic waste to people who have a vested interest in one business model or the other. But that's what's so great about technology and the free market. Getting a product faster, easier, and cheaper means the consumer wins. And I would not ever say that that is economic waste. I say that's economic prosperity and it's economic growth.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to quit shopping on the internet if you put an internet sales tax on. I mean, matter of fact, the government is counting on it because they want the money. This is what's so funny about it. You know what I mean? That argument doesn't make sense. The government wants they want to tax the internet because people are shopping on the internet. And so no one is going to stop doing that. And the other thing is, was there any talk about saving small business? We need to do this for our Main Street businesses. That's Dan Douglas. Was there any talk about that? Because to me, I don't see how giving more money to the government is going to save small business. I mean, is the government going to take that extra money and advertise for the local business, put up billboards, make commercials? No, they're not. They're going to spend it on something else.
Yeah, that's right. There was one question, I believe it was from Representative Pitch. They wanted some numbers, and at the end of the day, they could not give them any numbers on exactly how much money, more revenue, more taxes would come in if this passed. And Representative Pitch said what he would like to see is some data, too, on how local businesses, he used Toys R Us, though, as a local business example, which is not a local mom-and-pop store, but brick-and-mortar stores in a city, data about them closing. Because, that is an argument that people have pushed is, all these, or some of these businesses, these brick-and-mortar businesses are closing. And the reason they say is because of the internet sales tax. But, Paul, it's not because of the internet sales tax or no internet sales tax. As we know, it's just the free market.
Exactly.
People's buying habits have changed. And for government, for all these conservatives who say they're for free enterprise, for the free market, and that's what works best, this flies in the face of the free market. Now, yes, maybe some businesses have closed, but that business has shifted to online sales, and anyone can go on and engage in online e-commerce sales as well. And so I think that's an argument out there, and people see that, and so it's probably a pretty persuasive one. But at the end of the day, are we free market, or are we for government trying to control market through regulation and taxation?
Yeah. There's always a time where a business model begins to become less effective. And a lot of people don't want to admit that. They just say, well, they're buying and I'm in sales, and so why? But it's completely two different things. I can set up an internet store in no time. It'd take me a lot longer to set up a brick-and-mortar store. Patrick on our Facebook page just wrote, small businesses will not be saved by larger government and more regulation. Now, think about that. That's really, really good.
That's so good.
That's what they're advocating for. And, the pro-tax, the pro-government regulation, the pro-tax increase people, they never care about small businesses. Why all of a sudden do you think they care? They genuinely care about you now? No, they're using it as an argument to just try to get more money from the government. They don't. If they cared about small businesses, they'd actually, cut your taxes. But instead, they constantly are. It's just kind of ships passing in the night. There are mutual, perceived mutual interests. And that's why they're all of a sudden on the side of small businesses, because they can use it as a talking point to try to get more money for the government. And it's like you said, Josh, everybody down there, these bureaucrats are all talking about how this law or that law affects them, not affects the taxpayer. There's a huge disconnect there, where the biggest lobby, and it's important to know this, Josh, because you're the one that told me this. After you were down there a session, you realized this, that the biggest lobby down there are the bureaucracies lobbying for themselves.
Yes, yes, Paul, that's right. It's whatever, if it's an agency, a state agency, if they're there, if it's city or county, they're a very large presence there, and they're really pushing for the internet sales tax, because it would mean more money for their city or county. Paul, but if we want to talk about small business and helping businesses, let's cut the corporate income tax in the state. It brought in $433 million in fiscal year 2017. We can cut the Quick Action Closing Fund, which is a corporate welfare program that tries to redistribute our current businesses' tax revenue that they pay in. They redistribute to competing businesses to come in and compete against them, steal their employers away at a subsidized rate because the taxpayers getting it, and they're getting trying to get a bunch of these Chinese companies to come in, which I know you talked about.
Yes.
If we really want to help business, and especially small business in the state, let's cut the corporate income tax, and then at the same standard, let's cut all this spending on corporate welfare, and let's see these businesses come in. Let's do what President Trump and Congress did. They slashed the corporate income tax, and they are seeing almost daily corporations come out and announce pay raises and announce bonuses. I mean, the model works.
And investments. So, yeah, you're exactly
That's right.
You're exactly right. And, yeah, that whole China thing, all these Chinese companies that we're giving our money away to, when you look over there and what they're destroying churches, it's just like, wow, why are we participating in this? Why are we we just don't have the same values, and yet we're gonna take our taxpayer dollars and give it to these Chinese companies when their government's over there, destroying churches and persecuting Christians. Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies, it's always a pleasure to have you on. When's the next time the task force is going to meet?
They will start meeting again for 2 days a week, and so the next task force meeting will be March 19th and 20th. And they're about to hit the ground running. They're going to make recommendations. But, as you know, we've talked about kind of the reason for some of this task force is to condense down that decision-making authority to a small select group. So only the task force members, it was announced, will be able to make official recommendations for the task force to vote on. And if other legislators want to have a recommendation heard, they have to find a task force member to run that. And so that'll be coming up in the months ahead. And I think we're really going to see a lot of meat to these recommendations, hopefully, and there'll probably be a lot of debate going forward in the next few meetings.
I hope we don't have any recommendations about things that have already been voted down by the Arkansas General Assembly, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that. Josh Waters, I appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
All righty, thank you. Folks, we got to take a break. Hey, coming up here at the top of the hour, we're going to be talking with Mr. Dan Wass. Dan Wass is the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy, Behind the Lies of the Anti-Gun Radical. Excited to speak to him, and we'll be back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So Jan Morgan had an incredible night last night in Northeast Arkansas. Huge turnout, one of the largest I've ever seen for a event like the type of event that it was. Northeast Arkansas Tea Party meeting. She was very well received. A lot of people, new faces, who just out to see, okay, what's this Jan Morgan all about? You know who else was there? Well, according to Facebook, some guy claiming to be John Wayne's grandson. And look at this. So we have one person saying that so excited to meet John Wayne's grandson, and then another one. Go to the next photo. There we go. Another guy, John. Anyway, what I say claiming to be, I believe that this is really John Wayne's grandson. You can kind of see some resemblance, actually. I had no idea. I'm really jealous. I was there, and I didn't meet John Wayne's grandson. I didn't meet the Duke's grandson. Finishing up, Asa Hutchinson yesterday was on Fox News trying to combat this idea that he's not a conservative. Normally he goes on liberal MSNBC and CNN, but then he gets asked this question by Brian Kilmeade. Listen.
How do you give the minority a voice in Arkansas?
How do you give the minority?
Yeah, Democrats.
Well, they do have a voice, and I think that's what's great when you mention Charlie Baker and Larry Hogan, they're Republican governors in blue states. People see Republican governor as reaching out and trying to reach bipartisan consensus on some issues.
So you can
stick with your principles, but at the same time bring people in together. Computer science is obviously something that the Democrats support in Arkansas. Whenever it comes to our infrastructure that I hope that we can do, the middle-class tax cuts, we had Democrat support on some of these things. So you reach out to them and they respond.
Look at Washington do the opposite.
All right. So that's how you do it. You reach out to them. How do you get Democrat? How do you give them a voice? The correct answer is you don't. Unless they win elections. Or the correct answer is, well, it's not up to me to give them a voice. That's the correct answer, Governor. How do you give Democrats a voice? Well, it's not up to me to give them a voice. They want a voice, they got to win more elections. But the truth is, his answer reflects what we are. He was like, you mentioned those other popular governors. He's according to this poll, the 8th most popular governor. They're governors of blue states. They're Republican governors of blue states. So, that's the class. Birds of a feather flock together. That's the class of Republican Asa is. I mean, gosh, even with these bogus campaign election time polls, if you just look into them, it's like, why is it that you're popular? What are the reasons? Because I don't know if it's about limiting the size and scope of government, shrinking government, or at least let's just keep it the same size. Let the economy grow. What about that? Back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Is taking your taxpayer money that you're sending to Arkansas, and then they give it away to company A or B that's outside, and in most recent cases, a couple companies from China, and they get to come here with our tax dollars. And I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be better if we just eliminated the Arkansas corporate tax and quit doing that and then just treat all of our existing businesses and let them flourish and reinvest? And we've already seen that with the tax cut, the giant corporate tax cut we got nationally. How many people got bonuses? How many, Apple investing all these billions of dollars? What do you think about that?
Sure. Well, I think economic development is a lot of times a fancy term to say we're going to take money out of successful people's hands and we're going to put it in the hands of people who are running businesses who couldn't make it without government coming in and subsidizing it. And usually that's because somewhere else down the road there's a payday for someone else who's helping them get that money. Our business, hey, look, the Arkansas Economic Development Committee is not coming out to ABC Block and Brick and saying, hey, how can we give you guys taxpayers money to increase your business? We're going out there every day and we're hustling.
Yeah.
We're finding sales and we're looking at ways that we can cut costs and increase our bottom line so that we can pay our employees. We have all together between our owner, we're a privately owned company, all between ABC Block and Brick and a couple other companies that he owns. We have about 300 employees all together, and we take great pride in being able to provide them with good livings and all that kind of stuff, and good benefits. But yeah, we're paying money, and we don't mind. We don't mind paying our share on a corporate basis. Hey, look, we've got a fleet of about 40 big rigs and tractor trailers, and so we use the roads. We use these kinds of things, so we rely on those, and we have no problem with paying our share to help that kind of stuff. But when you're taking our money, and like you said, there's companies that are coming into Arkansas from China and from these other countries, and we're using taxpayer dollars to fund them and to help them succeed, but we're not taking care of our small business owners. We're not taking care of that. So I do think that there is a lot of mismanagement, like you said, of funds. But I'm not at the point where I want to say we need to get rid of a corporate tax rate or anything like that completely, because I do think we've prospered by the people who work in, and so we need to pay our share to benefit those things. But the money that comes in, whether it's local or federal tax dollars that are coming in, there's gross mismanagement of funds. I'll just tell you this. I look at things like, for instance, the United States Postal Service, which constantly runs with a negative, in the red. And if ABC Block, if I ran the company like that, I'd either get fired or our whole company would go bankrupt. You know what I mean? So only the government is allowed to run, fiscally irresponsible. Those of us out here in the small business world, we know what it's like. We know what it's like to make the hard calls and say, hey, the money's not here, or go through the recession. We're in the construction products industry, so during the recession, it hit us hard, and I know what it's like to have employees come to you and say, hey, I need a raise, I need to make more money so I can support my family, and to have to look at them and say, hey, right now is the time we're all making cuts. We can't do it. But now that the economy's back rolling again, now that the tax reform legislation has been passed out, our company's able to look at things and say, hey, we can give some of our we can do some employee bonuses and raises and things like that. We're better. The small business owner who's a successful small business. Now, there's people get into entrepreneurial endeavors who make big mistakes and don't know how to manage their own capital. But the successful small businesses like ABC Block and Brick, our owner, they can do a whole lot better with the money that they're earning and putting it back into people's pockets and investing in the economy than the government can ever do. Mm-hmm. And so let's make sure that small business owners, entrepreneurs, people that go out and have built this country on their backs. Our owner, for instance, he started as a 12-year-old boy laying block and brick with his dad in Whitehall, and now he's got the largest manufacturing, the largest concrete masonry manufacturing company in the state of Arkansas, and that's because he knew how to take his money and invest it and work hard and put it where it needed to go. The government.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning to everybody out there. This is hour number 2. My name is Paul Harrell, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here, and we got to have your help, though. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. You can also sound off, facebook.com/Conduit News. Please welcome to the program, very special guest. We have author Mr. Dan Wass is with us. He is the author of this book that he sent me, Good Gun, Bad Guy, Behind the Lies of the Anti-Gun Radical. Dan, welcome to the program, sir.
Hey, Paul, thanks so much for having me on your show. You're doing a fantastic job, and I also wanted to just thank you for your great support of Jan Morgan. Hopefully Arkansas can get her into the governor's seat.
Well, you know, I'm really pleased that you're following that race, because I mean it really is fascinating, the lack of conservatism that we have when compared to the platform and what the people have been voting on. So it's really good that you're watching that. Where are you calling in from now right now? Where do you live, Dan?
I live in a city called Saratoga Springs, New York. We're in kind of upstate New York. Nice. I happen to be friends with Jan Morgan, and I know personally she is probably the best thing for Arkansas. She's fantastic, and she's a real true patriot. But yeah, I'm from New York, and I like to get down there when I come down to Arkansas, Alabama, some of the southern states. I always feel welcome down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome in Arkansas anytime, and I'd love to have you in studio, and we can do a whole show together. That'd be fun sometime. So
absolutely.
So this book, and I understand you got another one, Good Gun, Bad Guy 2, Destroying the Anti-Gun Narrative. So I've read parts of your book here, in preparing for this interview, and I have to say, Dan, it really is interesting that you've taken the approach of, okay, let's try to understand why the left, doesn't like the concept of guns. And one of the things that you talk about really is just fear, that they just don't understand and that they're afraid. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, when we talk about fear of guns, the big thing that the anti-gun radicals are doing is they're using fear to manipulate people, to stay scared of guns. Because when people are scared of guns, they don't go to the range. They don't learn. They don't want to get knowledge. Because what happens when you get knowledge on something that you're scared of? The fear goes away. They don't want that, so they'll keep people scared to death of guns. But another thing that they're doing is they like to make those same people angry and hateful toward gun owners. Now, gun owners are the most responsible and respectable people that I've ever met in my life, and it's troubling to see how gun owners get tarnished by the anti-gun left in a way that just really creates a hatred. It's none of it's true. It's all propaganda from the anti-gunners, but the fear and the hate together create a perfect recipe to indoctrinate and create more anti-gunners.
I completely agree with that. I think that is, you're going to fear. I guess we don't see guns as tools anymore. I guess if you go back to the 18th century and beyond we used to see them more often. We would interact with them. They were tools. They weren't what the left basically wants us to think, that they're sentient beings now. They're just floating around ready to kill somebody.
Yeah, they want you to think that the gun is the cause of the violence. That's why they. And here's the thing, Paul. This is at the core of their anti-gun fear campaign. It's a term called gun violence. Everybody's heard it. The reason it doesn't make any sense is because it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as gun violence. There is, however, human violence, but they don't want to look at that because that most often reflects on failed liberal policies. We could talk about that, but we'd have to talk about poor lack of immigration patrol. We'd have to talk about drugs. We'd have to talk about inner city crime and poverty and all these things that they don't want to focus on. So what they do is they try to take that term violence and the word gun, and they put them together to make people think of guns and violence as synonyms.
One of the things that I thought was really good, we're talking with Dan Wass, the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. Matter of fact, we got the website up right now at facebook.com/Conduit News. You guys can go there who are listening. It's just goodgunbadguy.net. That's goodgunbadguy.net. One of the things I thought was fascinating is that you, in your book, you talk about how you grew up around guns, but the anti-gun left in the media and the narrative eventually convinced you as a younger man that guns were actually bad. And then you kind of had an awakening. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And the thing that I call it my saving grace was that I did have experience when I was a kid. I knew how to shoot guns and how to handle them properly because my dad taught me when I was a kid. We went hunting and target shooting and things. But he died when I was 24, and I was playing in rock bands most of my life, and I was kind of hanging with the wrong crowd, so to speak. I was hanging with people who, they weren't bad people, but they were more anti-gun, liberal-type people. And what happens is, when you're in an environment like that, you start to take on the beliefs and the thought process of the environment that you're in. This is just human nature. And I started to create and develop almost a hatred toward guns until I started to, there's a point when you have to let logic take over and then you can't lie to yourself anymore. And I started to do that. I started to realize that, what the heck am I thinking here? This is just crazy. And then I had a situation in my own life where a gun may have come in handy. Thankfully it didn't. But I tell the story in the book. But it was an awareness. It was a moment of clarity, an aha moment type of thing. And I said, "Geez, I'm really on the wrong side of this thing. Mm-hmm. This is just bad." So that's how it kind of turned around. So I've been on both sides of this conversation, and I can tell you, on the left, on the anti-gun side of the conversation, it is nothing but lies, rhetoric, propaganda, and nonsense, skewed statistics, and all sorts of stuff. But because I've seen it from both perspectives.
The left wants to take away our guns, right? I mean, that's their long game, right? They really want to confiscate all weapons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal. They want to restrict gun owners of their Second Amendment right because, for a couple reasons that I've come to learn, is that first of all, it's fear among the anti-gunners, but it's a sense of control from the anti-second radicals. And when I decipher the difference in the book between anti-second radicals and anti-gunners, the anti-gunners are the victims in this whole thing because they fall prey to the propaganda. But they really do want to, they want a gun-free America. And it's the most destructive thing that you could do, is exactly what they're doing. This is what causes violence. This is gun-free zones, for instance. I was just kind of going on some of the anti-gun websites and seeing what they're talking about these days. And you go to Crazy Town and Demanding Moms and all these anti-gun sites. And what they're trying to do right now is scare people by saying that they need these bulletproof backpacks for the children in schools because of all these crazy shootings. It's a problem that they created with gun-free zones. And they perpetrate the fear and they perpetrate the problem by keeping these places gun-free, because what happens is you invite maniacs when they know that there's no armed opposition. In other words, you can't, if you're a teacher, you can't have a concealed carry, and they even keep armed guards away from the school. They don't want any guns there. So what happens is the crazies go there. 69% of the time, killers will choose gun-free zones over places that...
Yes.
So what they're doing is they're creating a problem, and they're festering it and making it worse, and they're using it to scare people.
Can you mentioned Mom's Demand, Mom's Demand Action. What can you tell us about that group? Because it's kind of like they've taken the, from an anti-gun stance, they're like, okay, we got real, with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, you put moms in front of it. I feel like that was their tactic. They're like, we'll be more effective if we remind everybody that we're moms.
Yeah, well, yeah, good point. I call them the demanding moms. But I think they're just another one of those groups that people will latch on to these people who are already scared of guns will go to these groups for reassurance. Here's the thing. People have beliefs about guns, that guns are scary and guns are dangerous and all this stuff. And they want support groups that don't tell them necessarily the truth, but that reinforce their current beliefs. So these groups are perfect for people who already hate guns to go and kind of gather with and soak up the propaganda and the rhetoric and feel good about themselves, because once they have that reassurance from groups like Demanding Moms and Crazy Town, they feel better about themselves, almost like their thoughts and their beliefs are true because they have backup reinforcement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. There's strength in numbers. When you're in a group, people feel more confident in their opinions. Right now I'm looking at a photo, Dan. I don't know if you followed this. I know you're following Jan Morgan and you're friends with her and you support her run for governor. But back during the last session last year, they were trying to pass a Second Amendment, bill that really just was more restrictions to our rights. And Asa met with Mom's Demand and had a nice little photo op with them, and we've got that photo right now up on the screen. And it's just very, very frustrating, because you're just thinking, what if you're really pro Second Amendment? Like, why would you meet with this group that is anti-Second Amendment? Completely anti-Second Amendment, even though they claim that they're not. They claim that they're just for reasonable. That phrase is always troublesome. Just we want reasonable gun control.
Oh yeah, well exactly. Well, first of all, let me just address that reasonable gun control one. Here's the problem with this is people are being trained to not see and understand the difference between a right and a privilege. And Jan and I talk about this all the time. There's a distinct difference. A privilege is something that's given by man, can be taken away by man. It's often used as leverage. You tell your kid, well, you didn't eat your dinner, now you lose the privilege of staying up past 9 o'clock. A privilege can be taken away. A right cannot be taken away. A right is inherent and God-given, if you will. So what's happening is people are being trained in our society to blur the two. So this is why you can have exactly what you're talking about. This is why you can have someone say, well, I support, the Second Amendment, but I think we need common sense gun restrictions. Well, you can't do both. You can't support my right to keep and bear while restricting my right to keep and bear. It doesn't make sense. But they think this is okay because they see rights as privileges.
Well, and I'm really interested. It's great that you said that, Dan, because that's exactly what Governor Asa Hutchinson calls our Second Amendment multiple times, even though with public, I don't know what his advisors are telling him. But the guy constantly talks about our Second Amendment privilege. And, and Jan actually has a whole story where she says, you can't say that. And he says rights, privileges, same thing, according to her. Well, they're not the same thing. They're really very different.
They're very different. Jan and I have had this conversation many times. Jan wrote the foreword to my book, and we talk about this. This is probably the biggest, most important piece here that people need to understand. And there's actually a photo of Jan and me with the it's not of it's not a privilege, it's my right. And it's a pretty cool photo. They're both holding guns and stuff. But it's so true because, they're starting to really blur the definitions, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, it really, really, truly is. Well, Dan Wass, I appreciate you coming on. It's great to meet you. I'd love to have you on again soon. Your book, by the way,
anytime.
is Good Gun, Bad Guy, and the website once again is. Hang on one second. I just had it in front of me. Yeah, goodgunbadguy.net. And you also have a second book that's out that is a second edition. And so I'm just really, really interested in this. And I love what you're doing. Thank you for standing up for the Second Amendment. And we'll do this again soon.
Oh, thanks so much, Paul. Look forward to it.
Yes, sir. Dan Wass, everybody. Go check out that book if you haven't. That's a excellent interview, just full of knowledge, and really loved that he picked up on this whole right versus privilege thing. That's an important component. I mean, you've got to listen to the words your politicians are using. Words matter. And in this case, Asa has repeatedly, and we'll pull the audio, he's repeatedly said, that this is your Second Amendment privilege. And it's really frustrating. And he does that. In the context of restricting your gun rights, he's using the proper terminology. When he's creating more tape and more permission slips in order to exercise your Second Amendment right, he's actually turning it into a privilege by regulating it. But that's not what the Constitution says. It's not what the Arkansas Constitution says. We got to take a break, folks. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell, back in just a moment. Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Welcome. That was a fun interview. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be checking in once again with Melissa Kohler, who is very knowledgeable about what's going on with the hauling regulations, Department of Transportation. She did an interview on the program 2 weeks ago. They got a lot of traction, got a lot of people talking. I actually think the interview that we did with Melissa is what prompted, in many ways, the Department of Transportation to come out and make the statement refuting, in many cases, some of the stuff she was saying it's no big deal. We have politicians coming out refuting, saying it's not going to affect livestock haulers at all. But, I mean, what does the law actually say with this? And, what actually constitutes a commercial vehicle if you win prize money at a show or something? This is a lot. Anyway, we're gonna check in with her because I know she has been following what the government is saying that they're going to do with this, and so maybe, who knows? Maybe it's good news. I don't know. All right, so see what else do we have here? Oh yeah, this is a huge thing. Did you guys see what Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, we've covered this extensively on the program. I mean, I feel good to say that. We have covered the sovereign immunity situation extensively on the program. And right now you can no longer sue the state of Arkansas because the king can do no wrong. This Arkansas Supreme Court saying the state has sovereign immunity. Well, let me give you another real-world example of what that actually means for you. And this was probably the scariest demonstration, the scariest fallout from that Supreme Court decision that took away our right to sue the state of Arkansas. John Moritz, the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, headline State Immunity to Figure in Case by Burger King. Franchisee sues over taxes it pays on managers' meals. Arkansas's justices will hear a new set of arguments this week over their recent decision to render the state immune from lawsuits, and this case is a whopper, as in the signature sandwich at Burger King. Why did you have to say that, John Moritz? You should have ended your sentence. It's not as good of a pun. If you explain the pun, everybody knows exactly. Why did he say that? As in the signature sandwich at Burger King. Come on, man. Come on. I love puns. I'm sorry. Okay. Joe reminded me to tell you a pun joke. Because I just thought of one. Okay. Let's see here. Burger King's Central Arkansas franchisee, that owns several restaurants, is suing the Department of Finance and Administration in a tax dispute over free meals given to restaurant managers. So DF&A, it's like you got to pay taxes on the meals that you give your managers that are complimentary, that are free. Can you believe this? Now, can you imagine? So the DF&A wants their money on something so stupid, and you can't sue the state. Sorry. Now, what does that mean? I mean, that means you can have any DF&A bureaucrat can say, you owe this much money, and you have no recourse? You have no way to say, wait a second, you guys are totalitarian freaks. I want my due process, and I want my day in court. You have no mechanism to use the government to say, the government's trying to take more of my money. If they can just tell us, well, you owe this, and we can't sue them, what are we going to do? It's a huge development in this case. Back in just a moment.
Didn't do that for him. And so, I said all that to say this is there's a lot of mismanagement of funds. If we put the money back in the hands of the of the small business owners, they'll do a lot better with growing our economic development for the state and for the country than the government will ever do.
Yeah, it's very, very, very well said. And I certainly appreciate your perspective, your point of view, Mr. Kyle Boyd, and I appreciate you coming on. And I just have one more point to make. And so I totally understand, and I think most people appreciate, I mean, we all want to pay our taxes and contribute and do everything. But back to the Arkansas corporate tax rate. If you did eliminate it, just so you know, I want our audience to know this. If you were to eliminate the corporate tax break and you were to eliminate the giving away of taxpayer money to these companies trying to recruit them here, it actually would just offset. If we would just stop doing what we're doing, you could give all these corporations in Arkansas a massive tax break.
Absolutely,
and it would actually offset. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And they're going to debate it. I hope they debate it down there and eventually move on it. But it's doable. The amount of money Arkansas gets off of the corporate tax rate is really not that much money. So anyway.
Sure, and you're exactly right. There's always a trade-off, and if we would reduce our wasteful spending, we could. And manage our finances well as a state, we could reduce a lot of things for the taxpayer. Like I said, I believe in the idea of taxes. I don't think that we can have a tax-free state,
correct,
or anything. But you're exactly right on the idea of we could rearrange our spending. We could get rid of a lot of wasteful, mismanaged funds, and we could significantly reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate your perspective. I'd love to do it again sometime, so let's stay in touch.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity very much.
Yes, sir. All right, be safe. Folks, that concludes this edition of our Conservative Future segment.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, the telephone number 870-275-9799. We're broadcasting over at facebook.com/Conduit News. You guys feel free. You can go to conduitnews.com throughout the day. If you ever missed this broadcast, you want to go back and listen to the first hour, get the podcast. Go to conduitnews.com. You want to listen to this hour, you want to share it with friends, you can also, it's tweeted out. I tweet out the links as well. We tweet, I guess, at Paul Harrell 1776 tweets out the podcasts every time that we put them out there. Every time we upload them, and then, of course, you can follow at Conduit News, Twitter as well. It's all available. So if you let's say that a lot of you are maybe 7 o'clock listeners, and you can't get to the 6 o'clock hour, you go back and listen to it later. I have a feeling that our next guest, she may be one of the ones that likes to go back and listen to the 6 o'clock hour, maybe at 8 o'clock. Melissa Kohler is with us. Melissa, welcome back.
Oh, Paul, you're outing me
I'm
to
sorry.
everyone. No, I am not a morning person.
Well, and that's why I know how valuable your time is, and I really appreciate you being on with me this morning. You are the operations manager at Kohler Moving and Storage, so you know a thing or two about hauling, and so we really love to have you on as an authority here. Last time we had you on 2 weeks ago, we were talking about these new DOT regulations that came from an Obama-era law, and now it's going to affect agricultural haulers and things like that. And I know that you've seen on Facebook where the Department of Transportation is saying that's not the case. You have politicians saying everything's fine because there's been a lot of concerns raised. And so I wanted to have you on to give us an update. What can you tell us about where we are now?
No, there's no change, which is, is what actually made me honestly, Paul, I got quite angry. Last week I had a person that I met, Dane McCracken, and he's over there closer to you, closer to the eastern side of the state. He runs the biggest roping event in Arkansas, and he was at the ELD mandate meeting down in Dardanelle when I was, and we met there. And he tagged me in a post that he saw from State Senator Dave Wallace. And, the Senator Wallace was giving out information that the Arkansas Highway Police had evidently given out. Now, when I went to their website to see if they actually posted that information on their website, I couldn't find it anywhere. Evidently this is an email or a memo that went out to our state legislators so that the legislators could help the highway police disseminate information. But, in that post, they're trying to tell us that that this law isn't going to affect the agricultural industry, that people that are hauling horses and cows and pigs don't need to worry about this law. And it's an absolute falsehood. I really do not like calling out our highway police with a falsehood. Just because, they impact my industry, my trucks all the time. But when it comes to this law, this statement is an absolute falsehood. The information being disseminated via social media and hauling publications is correct. People do need to be concerned. And, the highway police are holding that we're all, those of us that are talking about it that aren't lawyers and that aren't policemen, we just don't know what we're talking about. And it's not going to cause these people any headaches or any fines or whatnot. And that's just false.
Okay, so the law originated under Map 21. I'm trying to recap our first interview. Map 21 is this Obama era law, and then I guess it went into effect last year. But the agriculture community they had a certain amount of days until it was going to go into effect here. And so is that correct? First of all, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So the law went into effect for the transportation industry December 18, 2017. November 20, the agriculture industry received a 90-day exemption. So that's almost over.
Okay.
That's ending this month.
So is so the highway police, and by the way, what this requires is there are now weight restrictions and logging requirements potentially for people who are, hauling horses and things like that. That's where this comes in. So is the highway police saying that it's just not even a thing, or are they saying we're not going to enforce the new requirements? What are they saying exactly?
What I'm seeing from the Arkansas Highway Police, and I want to make this very clear, the Arkansas Highway Police is the Arkansas hand of the Department of Transportation. So they are an Arkansas entity, but federal transportation law is meted out by them on our highways and interstates. They are trying to say through their post that they are not going to be focusing on these drivers.
Okay.
Now, here's my problem with that, Paul. For my business, I have to know what this 150 air mile radius is, because when my trucks are operating in state, there's a certain point where they have to be electronic logging, and the rest of the time we could be operating on a paper log when we're doing a local job. So it depends on how we're affected. So I have 3 maps, and I have a map that centers in Little Rock and shows me what 150 air mile radius is. I have one that centers in Fort Smith, which is, where my business is located. And then I have one that's centered over in West Memphis. And the only way that I wouldn't need to worry about an electronic log in most of Arkansas is if I'm based right in Little Rock, because that 150 air mile radius extends all the way outside of the state in 4 ways. And when you take your protractor and make your circle, except for the corners of the north west and the northeast corners, I could go throughout most of the state and be in a 150 air mile radius. But if I'm coming from Fort Smith, I get just past Little Rock, maybe around England, Arkansas, or whatnot, and I have to start electronically logging. And if I'm coming from West Memphis, I can get just past Conway, and I better be electronically logging. So, now why does that matter? Well, if they don't pull me over, everybody's thinking, oh, it's no big deal, right? Well, there's these little bitty notations all throughout the law, the logging laws, not just this ELD mandate. Those of us in transportation, we know the logging laws, and we've been operating them under them forever. Since they were brought into inception. If you're supposed to be logging, Paul, if you're heavy enough to be logging, and you are not, whether that's paper or electronically, you're not logging, and you get yourself into a wreck, you are the at-fault vehicle. It doesn't matter who's at fault. If you were supposed to be logging, and and you weren't, or your hours of service were out, you were out of hours of service, the way they believe, just the way the law is written, is you weren't supposed to be there anyway. You were supposed to be pulled over on the side of the road. So that automatically makes you the at-fault driver.
Yeah, and just because, and just because they say that they're not going to focus on it, I mean that doesn't make me happy. That's not the kind of government I want. Well, here's the law in the book, so we can throw the book at you if we want. But just trust us, we're not going to focus on it. And then, like you said, you get in an accident, and what are they going to do? We need some sort of certainty here. We have this Facebook post up from Senator Dave Wallace, and I know other people are putting this information out as well because I've seen it other places. And so here's the question. These days, the highway police and legislators are in a rare position of explaining to the public, he writes, that a new law does not affect them. So he's saying, the highway police, he's disseminating the information. He writes, in this case, it's the farmers and people who haul cattle, horses, and other livestock. There have been concerns that they would be affected by new federal regulations geared for commercial truck drivers. The highway police have held meetings with the public and had individual discussions with legislators to assure them that nothing has changed in the enforcement of farm vehicles hauling livestock and rodeo animals. Now, first, let's stop there. You went to one of these public meetings. You said it was very unorganized in our last interview. So, which is it? And did they say that farm vehicles would be regulated in that meeting you went to?
Well, it was extremely disorganized. People came away not understanding the law, having tons of questions, being told, hey, just call our office and talk with us. Can you imagine how many people, with agriculture being the number one business in this state, they don't have the time to field all of our calls? Okay, they should have done a better job at the meetings. But what they're telling people in this industry is, hey, a covered farm vehicle is okay. Well, what is a covered farm vehicle? Well, it's a vehicle operated by a farm owner or operator, or one of their employees, or a family member of that farm owner and operator, being used to transport agricultural commodities, livestock, or machinery to and from the farm or ranch. But it has to be equipped with a special license plate, Paul. And when you go looking at what you're allowed to do when you have a farm tag on your vehicle, well, not everyone wants a farm tag on their vehicle that's moving their agricultural commodities, their livestock, or their machines, okay? The reality is that a farm tag is supposed to stay in state. You're not supposed to see an Arkansas, unless you live right on the border, you're not supposed to be seeing an Arkansas farm tag in Missouri or Oklahoma or Texas or Tennessee, okay? It's meant to stay close to the home. It's meant to stay within that 150 air mile radius. But when you really talk to farmers and you get to know these people don't have the ability to have one truck that never goes farther than 150 air miles from their home.
Mm-hmm.
They have reason to haul outside that radius, and not on what the law and the highway police and the legislators keep terming occasional.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you're hauling horses for rodeo, there's nothing occasional about it. But that means you have to operate under these laws. And these laws they're very detrimental to the livestock. Forget the driver, okay? Forget that he's got to put money into this system and that he's very possibly going to be fined on a regular basis because he's now having to operate under these. And what about the animal? Okay, the driver can drive, like we said last time. You can drive up to 8 hours straight, take a 30-minute break, and drive 4 more hours. That's 11 hours. That leaves you 3 hours to take bathroom breaks, get a little something to eat. But once that 14 hours is over, that rig must stay in place without moving more than 5 miles an hour at a time for 10 consecutive hours. Now, if you have traveled this country at all and used our interstate system, there are not places to unload livestock in a regular manner. Now, there's places here and there along the interstate as you go, especially, some of our plain states are good about it, where there's space to unload horses. And I'm only talking about horses here. Okay? But the regular truck stop, the regular place a person can pull off the road, there's no place for these animals to be offloaded. Can you imagine whether it's the coldest portion of our year or even the hottest portion of our year, a horse having to stand in a trailer for 10 hours because that electronic logging device says if you move, you've made an infraction that if the cops pull you over, they're going to fine you for driving illegally?
So,
because that's what it's saying.
Yeah, and so this is what's interesting. So, I mean, I'm looking back at this Facebook post from the Highway Police. In response to concerns from legislators, farmers, and cattlemen, Highway Police officials have assured state lawmakers that they have not stepped up enforcement of farm vehicles and livestock trailers. So how can they? How is that possible? I mean, this is a federal law? I mean, is federal funding at stake here if we don't enforce these laws?
Well, that's what I've been told. Is that if the only thing evidently it would take the governor saying don't enforce it. I mean, that's the only difference I've found. I guess ensuring us that they're not doing it is kind of like an underhanded way to go around and not say anything. I understand. I looked on the website. It's the first thing that they've got when you look at their regulations. They've got the farm vehicle regulation up there for everyone to see. Okay, but the farm vehicle regulation, when they talk about exemptions here for agricultural vehicles, it's hours of service exemption, and it literally lists that in Arkansas, our harvest season has been defined as 365 days a year. So we get an exemption for that, and that means that we get an hour of service exemption for drivers of agricultural commodities from the source of that commodity located within the 150 air mile radius. Well, all that means is that if you stay, if you're in Little Rock and just barely go outside the state, or, it just means it's the same exemption I have on my truck. I have an exemption that if I don't go past 150 miles, that I don't have to use my electronic log. Now, I also have that kind of held on me that if I do that more than 8 days in a 30-day period, then I have to start logging, and that one's not listed here. But they still are having to know what their 150 air mile radius is and And once they pass that, their exemption goes away. Okay? And
this is, I mean,
and it's really ridiculous. Look, Arkansas Highway Police, listen. We drive all over. This whole state does. We are a rural state, and we drive. We don't live in New York City where people walk all the time, or even Dallas or Chicago, and people are using the L train. This state drives. Texas drives. Oklahoma drives. Missouri drives. These people drive, and they drive long distances, and they do it regularly because all of us want the exemption. We claim it on our tax. Okay? My daddy bought me horses when I was 8 years old, and he told me flat out because he was going to get a deduction on his taxes. When he claims that, he falls under this law if he's heavy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so would that mean
how does somebody get heavy enough?
Could they possibly?
You buy a Ford Super Duty and you're heavy enough, and you buy a Ram truck 3500, you're heavy enough.
Could you?
That's all there is to it.
Possibly, I mean, could you see the DFNA, Department of Finance and Administration? I mean, if you get pulled over, for alleged violation, you say I'm not, I guess could they find things out if they look at your taxes? I've been told that may be in the future, and the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. They made very clear to me at the Dardanelle meeting, Paul, that they have questions, and one of them is, do you take a deduction for this on your taxes? And if you do, you fall under the mandate.
Yeah, and so if you were to say no,
you may have a little exemption here or there, but these guys were the head of the group. Are you really telling me that every one of your officers understands this? And I just, my biggest concern, and honestly, Paul, the agriculture, their biggest concern is the animal. And that's what most of these people don't get. We're stewards of our animals. We care about our animals. Is it ridiculous to put this on us as a person? Yes. Is it going to make our life so much more difficult? Absolutely. But whether it is a livestock hauler with a tractor trailer and he's hauling it from the livestock auction, or it is a person with a Ram truck 3500 and a 42-foot trailer and 4 horses on there, and he's going to the next quarter horse show, we care about our animals. And using these hours of service and then requiring these rigs to stay on the road puts our animals' lives at risk. And there's so many implications. If it's a livestock hauler, he's taking those animals to be slaughtered. If the animal's dead when he gets there, they just lost money. They can't slaughter the animal.
So we have got, this is certainly government overreach. We're talking with Melissa Kohler, operations manager at Kohler Moving and Storage. I have one more question, then we have to go. The highway police, they are saying this. Okay, so you've obviously raised some serious issues here, as you did in your last interview. Highway police, though, in response to your first interview, says, if you occasionally load a horse on a trailer to participate in a livestock show or rodeo, nothing has changed, according to the head of the highway police. Is that a true statement? Nothing has changed?
I don't believe so. Everything has changed. Because, look, those of us that go out and rodeo, our kids' junior rodeo, I'm a 4-H leader. I have 4-Hers that travel to jackpots with their goats and their sheep. It's absolutely changed. If you don't know the law and you're found breaking the law, you're going to incur large fines, whether you do break that law in the state of Arkansas or it's Oklahoma or Texas, okay, because it's federal law, point blank.
Well,
and I'm calling for our legislators to start making a difference for us, Paul. No, this is not an Arkansas law, but you cannot tell me that the voices of our state elected representatives won't be louder than my voice. Okay?
Exactly.
Now, maybe maybe my horn's tooting a little more right now because I'm on your show, but I'm not going to get Tom Cotton to pick up when I call his D.C. office like my state legislator is going to get.
Right.
Okay,
right.
Yes, Tom and I have met, we've shook hands, but he's not going to recognize my name. And our state are those that are in the Farm Bureau with the equine industry and the cattle industry and our governor and our legislators have the bigger voice. And it's time they quit listening to the highway police saying nothing's changed and start listening to their constituency. We're mad, we're concerned, and we want their help getting this fixed.
Melissa Kohler, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us, and we'll keep everybody updated. Keep me updated on any developments that you hear, okay?
Thanks, Paul. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Good morning to you, folks. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com.
Attention to this important announcement. If you have ever taken prescriptions like Adderall,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We're winding things down here. We right now joining us live, we've got Mr. Bob Bailey, candidate Republican for the special election in Senate District 16. Bob, welcome back to the program, sir.
Hi, Paul. Glad to have you.
Yes, sir. We're winding things down, but I'm glad you called in to give us an update. Early voting in that very important special election, establishment versus non-establishment. What can you tell us about early voting starting today?
I think this will be a very important election. You know, as you know, special elections aren't very well attended, so we've been doing our best to get the word out and make sure that everybody that can vote will actually get out and vote.
And, you know, I think that certainly is key. It is all about voter turnout. You think there's more enthusiasm with people who are tired of the status quo than there are who want to just continue, you know, growing government?
I think so. We went to Jasper last night, made a lot of good progress, heard the same thing over and over. Went to Deer, made some good progress. So, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one.
I mean, are people just fed up? I was at a Jan Morgan event last night. I mean, there was a huge crowd there, and it just seems like there's a ton of energy of people saying, hey, you know what, we really need to get involved here and make sure that the government is representing the people and not just representing, you know, the lobbyists and special interests in Little Rock.
Yeah, I think the wave is out there, the same one that got Trump elected.
Bob, are you there? I think we lost Bob. Bob, can you hear me? We must have a bad connection. Well, anyway, we're going to check in. We'll check in with are you there, Bob? Bob? I think we lost him. Okay, it's okay. We're out of time anyway. But you hear him say the same wave that got Trump elected. Yeah, I mean, if you look, the people of Arkansas voted for Trump in the Republican primary, not just in the general. Trump won Arkansas in the Republican primary, so that's certainly a key factor. We'll check in with Mr. Bob Bailey tomorrow as well. Folks, early voting in Senate District 16, and those of you listening on KARV 101.3 and 610 AM out of Russellville, that is you. That is your district. So you guys have an opportunity to make a choice. And the choice, as always, in a Republican primary is establishment or non-established, status quo or change. So you guys be the judge. Make your choice accordingly. That is all the time we have for today. We got a great show lined up for you tomorrow. You don't want to miss it. It's Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell, Arkansas. Be safe.